Chapter 51. Tactic Wolf Fawn. You are listening at novelfull.audio. As the main training platform for espers across Milky Way, virtual battlegrounds enjoyed a great deal of popularity. Of course, Han also trained in virtual battlegrounds before, but only under the influence of the Dark Net and Pathless. Han always felt that this virtual method training of simulating combat always seemed to be missing something. Maybe it's as Pathless said, a battle without blood doesn't count as a real battle. When the virtual battleground got activated, the setting was chosen at random. Han and his temporarily formed team got teleported to a tropical forest, and Xian Beija's group would be somewhere within 5 miles of Han. After sincerely asking about everyone's power, Han began to think. No one else talked, because everyone had already accepted Han's position as the team leader. After all, Han's fame and achievement was already out there, and he was also the one that accepted the challenge. A faint smile appeared on Han's face as he said in a deep voice, "We will use this strategy." After listening to Han's battle arrangement, everyone was shocked and confused. In their eyes, Han's tactic was way too unexpected. Cheng Zhong scratched his big head and asked, "Is this really going to work?" Han answered, "Why not? Xian Beige must think that I will use Void End to force everyone into a melee fight with our lives, but we won't do that. The best tactic is one that the enemy would never expect. If you guys believe me, then let's spread out and start preparing." Han's words did make sense and everyone nodded. Under Han's lead they quickly disappeared into the jungle. On the other side of the virtual battlefield, Xian Beija's group was also making their arrangements. Surrounded by teammates that they worked together over years training, Xian Beige was already too familiar with everyone's abilities, so it wasn't necessary to ask everyone like Han. Xian Beige gritted his teeth and said in a deep voice, "Han is in fact nothing. His void domain will make us lose our superpowers, so we have to fight them head-on. But unfortunately, he forgot. We are all 4-star espers and we have higher power source index and better tactical coordination. Coordinate around me, we will solidify our position and wait for them to rush us. By that time, Han will know that we are better fighters in melee range as well." Everyone agreed to Xian Beija's tactic. Against the unreasonable and fearsome Void End power, the vast majority of tactics seemed incredibly vulnerable because Han was capable of summoning a void domain of 10 meters in radius, where no one inside could use any power nor get attacked by any power. So, the best way to deal with Han is to exchange melee blows head-on with him. When Han's group arrives everyone will swarm them. There's no way that a group of 4-star espers will lose to a group of lower-level opponents in a melee fight. After the plan was set, Xian Beija's 5-men team formed a circle, back-to-back, and stood on a vacant ground in the jungle waiting for Han. Because there was no weapon settings, everyone was unarmed. Suddenly not far from the jungle a figure flashed by and the trees began to shake. "Here they come. Don't worry, as long as we hold formation, we won't leave them any chance to attack." Xian Beige shouted to everyone to boost morale. At that moment, they were in the open space inside the jungle, surrounded by dense trees and bushes. Silhouettes, shadows, wind blowing, trees shaking, it all made Xian Beija's team very nervous, not knowing which direction Han's group would attack. Suddenly, something crashed into the formation. All they saw was a flitting shadow dashing out of the forest and a huge fat man. That was Cheng Zhong, the weight conversion power esper. He held Han in front of him. It seemed to be that tank strategy they used last time. What's strange was not that Han and Cheng Zhong charged at them, but there was only 2 of them. Bai Haiying, Nicholas, Tu Lamu, where did the other 3 go? Xian Beige and his team didn't get a chance to think why Han didn't use his void domain and lead his whole team to charge, and the huge Cheng Zhong already crashed into Xian Beija's formation like a bomb. Boom! Imagine how powerful a big fat 600 pounds fatty charging in like mad would be. Han didn't activate his power at all, so after the violent collision Xi and Beija's team was immediately off their feet. The second strongest, deputy battalion commander, even got sent flying away from the formation. It couldn't be denied that that move of Han and Qingzhong was really cruel, and they even specifically targeted a little girl like Nbebe. All they saw was that the Nbebe with two beautiful long legs got sent flying immediately. Suddenly, from the other side of the forest three shadows dashed out. It was Nicholas and the others. Those three are mind control, ice, and rock descent espers. Bai Haiying immediately used mind control to attack Nbebe's consciousness, and Nicholas and Tu Lamu quickly surrounded her. 3 against 1, also with mind interference. Despite Nbebe being the second strongest pro in the entire training camp, she was immediately killed on the spot. This case was something Xi and Beige never thought of before the start of battle. Han and Qingzhong acted as an assault team, stabbing straight into the heart of the formation like a sharp knife to occupy Xi and Beija's team. Then the trio will ambush the outer perimeter and execute individual enemies caught out of position. It has only been a few seconds since the beginning of battle, and the number 2 pro and Bebe on Xi and Beija's side had already left the battlefield. The genius squad that originally had all the advantages is now facing the difficult situation of number shortage. And that's not even the worst part yet. Han didn't use his void domain right. But just when Xi and Beige and his team decided to use their powers to attack, they suddenly realized that Han's void domain was activated. It was really a nasty void domain that could make people puke blood. Only the devil knows when Han will active or deactivate. Something like this domain can't be touched or seen. It's really hard to defend against it. Xi and Beige and his team couldn't use any superpowers, so they concentrated on dealing with Han and Qingzhong, only to find that these two guys weren't easy to deal with. Han was like a pile of hard bones. You give him a punch and he would not even hum once. As for Qingzhong, that was a 600-pound block of meat right there. Although he's lower level, but his tolerance to physical attacks was still incredibly high. Boom, in the blink of an eye, Buluk flew out too. Han quietly closed the void domain, and Qingzhong took advantage of the deactivated domain and knocked Buluk right out of the formation again, where the already waiting Tri-Zero immediately rushed out again, killing the third-ranked pro in Xi and Beija's group within a second. Within 9 seconds, Xi and Beija's group already lost 2 generals, and not even a single guy got hurt on Han's side. Now it's 5 against 3, Han did not hesitate and he waved towards the enemies, signaling the stomping to begin. Yes, when Void Domain was fully activated and the trio that was ambushing now joined the fight against 3 enemies, that's stomping. As the saying goes, losing the battle is like a mountain falling down. After miscalculating twice, Han led his team and slaughtered Xi and Beija's group in one breath. 5-0. Absolute stomp. Han and Qingzhong were like 2 sharp wolf fangs, biting directly into the enemy body and abruptly tearing their defense apart, then start chewing away on the body. Han gave a very suitable name for this tactic, Tactic Wolf Fang. It has only been 17 seconds since the beginning of battle, but Team Xi and Beige, all out. Chapter 52. Operation Divine Sword. You are listening at novelfull.audio. The training camp was completely silent, even the sound of a pin drop could be heard. Everyone couldn't believe it. The team led by Han was able to neatly execute the battle in seconds, stomping the higher-level Xi and Beige team in one breath. When Han and his team got out of the virtual pod room, the crowd burst into noise and quickly gathered around Han's squad. They all wanted to know how Han won, and how he came up with this fearsome tactic Wolf Fang. Xi and Beige was still somewhat angry, but his teammates were all very convinced of the loss. And Bebe energetically ran to Han and tapped him on the shoulder. She acted depressed and said, "Han, you are so mean. I'm the only girl and you still took care of me first. Hurry and talk about that tactic Wolf Fang. How did you come up with it?" Xi and Beige felt embarrassed, but he wanted to know Han's secret too, so he hid behind the crowd and straightened his ears to listen. Han paused a second to organize his thoughts, and then he said, "Tactic Wolf Fang is something I thought of in the shower. When I activate my void domain, everyone will charge at once, and the enemies will of course be rattled when they lose their power, and my team will know how to fight without powerful through long-term cooperation. As a result, it will be us who are prepared, against the completely unprepared enemy. That way, one bit from the fangs will either kill them or make them semi-disabled, so that's why this tactic is called Wolf Fang, which means to deliver a ruthless bite whenever there's an opportunity. Void domains can't be seen, other than me, no one knows when it's active and when it's deactivated. If we take advantage of this and let me deliver signals to my teammates, then we can suddenly deactivate the void domain and let everyone release powerful super ability attacks at once. Then, we can summon the domain again right when they want to use their power, and take advantage of their vulnerability and go up and deliver merciless bites. Every bite will let the enemy bleed heavily, and after a few rounds, I don't believe that I can't bite him to death. Everyone was attracted by the tactic Wolf Fang described by Han, and they all felt that if they could join the Wolf Fang squad and strike enemies together with Han, it would be very satisfying. Han saw the depression on the face of Xian Beige and other 4-star geniuses. He walked up to them and patted Xian Beige's shoulder and said to everyone, whether tactic Wolf Fang can be successful, it's fully reliant on everyone's support and needs everyone's effort. Like Xian Beige, when we were in simulated combat, this guy was the toughest to deal with. It required all 5 of us to cooperate to take him down, which shows that his foundation is really solid. That's why, I hope Xian Beige can join our Wolf Fang squad, and strike enemies with us in the future. Seeing how easily Han can let go of the past and bury the hatchet, everyone was really surprised. After all, Xian Beige's attitude towards Han earlier wasn't that friendly. Han paused for a second and continued, with so many foreign enemies targeting us, it is not an easy thing for Earth to keep its spot in the Milky Way, that's why we must remember. The people of Earth should never fight other people of Earth. You can't prove anything to others through factions. If you are strong, then point all of our guns against the hostile foreign and go find our real enemies. In Long Chuan's office, he quietly lit a cigarette, and remained silent for a long time. Li Yu was very happy for Han. After all, he was not just a member of the First Legion, but also a subordinate of the Extinction Site Administration. Seeing how Han stomped the students that Long Chuan was so proud of, Li Yu could feel the glory on his face too. Long Chuan blew a smoke ring, smiled and said, "It's truly unbelievable. Han isn't just a powerful soldier, but also a tactical genius. Take advantage of the nature of Void and establish a special tactic squad to strike with Void domain. It shouldn't be something a boy at this age can think of." Li Yu proudly said, after this new year Han will only be 17 years old. His battle spirit, will, understanding and adaptability of tactics, are all very developed and sophisticated now. For someone like it, the sky could be the only limit. Long Chuan's eyes lit up suddenly, and he asked in a deep voice, "Suppose I send Han to the battlefield right now, would you think that I'm crazy?" Battlefield. Li Yu was very shocked. Could it be First Legion got its first mission that quickly? Long Chuan quickly took out a battle plan with the printed words, "Top Secret," on top and said in a deep voice, "I'm planning to launch a surprise attack on the Thornbird raiding group after 2 months, it's that group that attacked Shanghai, almost blew up the South Pole base, and caused Han to be unconscious for a month. Our current problem is that we only have 1 starship, but based on our intelligence, the Thornbirds have up to 4 destroyers, 11 frigates, 2 industrial ships and an electronic reconnaissance ship. If we use the Atlantic to attack their base, it will likely set off Star Wars. Although our Atlantic cruiser is stronger than any of their battleships, but our numbers at a disadvantage and it would be difficult to kill them all. The most likely outcome is lose-lose. That's why, we need a more audacious plan that can annihilate these guys but also preserve our fighting strength at the same time, so I came up with this Operation Divine Sword. Without Han and his Wolf Fang tactic, we have only 50% chance of succeeding. But now, we have 80%. Old you should understand what this tactic Wolf Fang means when it's against a large battalion-scale battle, right? Li Yu was completely shocked by Long Chuan's adventure operation. Earth had always been the one getting bullied by others, and it's completely unheard of that Earth would take the initiative to attack others. Li Yu listened as he quickly read through Long Chuan's battle plan. Of course I know, if Han's Wolf Fang tactic is successful, then it's like as if a soldier that was fighting barehanded now had weapons. It's like a rabbit grew sharp teeth, and it can bite people now. Essentially, Han's Wolf Fang tactic was like a battlefield metronome plus compass, used to adjust the whole campaign's attacking rhythm. Wherever needed, the Wolf Fang would be there to bite. The Wolf Fang squad can lead the entire assault force's attacking direction, and at the same time protect the vulnerable spots of our battalion. It's not excessive to call it the versatile tactic on the battlefield. Li Yu expressed his opinion on the Wolf Fang tactic. Long Chuan kept on nodding, and his eyes kept on getting brighter. We are all aware, the hateful Thorn Bird Raiders are just a pawn of our real enemy. If we can't even take care of the pawn, then the manipulating hands behind the curtain will become more unscrupulous. It's time for Earth to shine its sword and let those hands behind the curtain know, it won't be so easy to swallow Earth. Within all of the espers on Earth, there is no coward. Long Chuan said in excitement, but then he started coughing immediately. Li Yu was very clear, as the current number 1 esper on Earth, Long Chuan's body was getting worse. That's why he's very anxious to shine the sword, his time was running out. Li Yu laid down Long Chuan's battle plan, considered briefly and said, the only problem is, if we want to win this war, we must take the risk and send the members of the Genius Camp and Han onto the battlefield, while Han and them still shoulder the heavy responsibility of competing in the galactic meet. We can't afford to have any loss of these talents. Long Chuan laughed bitterly twice, looked out into the pitch-black night. The wind of the Nazca Plateau is strong, also cold, like someone screaming. Of course I know it's very risky, but we are already out of time. The galactic meet is next year. You think if the youth of Earth can get a high score, the Milky Way Alliance will reject the proposal of colonizing Earth again? I'm afraid it's not that simple. All these years, I have always wondered, Galactic loved Earth so much, he's even willing to sacrifice his life for Earth. Such a determined and patriotic soldier, why did he leave without saying goodbye after the galactic meet? Is there really no hidden reason? No conspiracy? Pinning the hope on others is the greatest tragedy of Earth. Of course, we need to fight in the galactic meet, but we also need to fight at the Milky Way federal level. If we want others to think highly of us, we must first do things to make us think highly of ourselves. Li Yu was suddenly stunned. About Galactic, everyone had doubts in their heart, but only a few will speak up like Long Chuan. Galactic really just left without saying goodbye that year. Could it be Sally Empire, or some other enemies that want to colonize Earth had secretly laid their hands on Galactic? No one knew the truth, and people didn't want to think towards the tragedy side. If Galactic was assassinated by an enemy that year, then even if Han and others can get a good score during galactic meet, it's very possible that the enemy will strike again. The Earth that was in possession of B.class extinction domain, has been the ideal land that several nearby empires want to colonize. Dong dong dong, the old-fashioned clock tower at the base rang. It was the New Year bells. But there was no celebration, no joy, only pressure. Because this year is when the galactic meet takes place and also the judgment day that decide whether Earth will be colonized. Long Chuan rubbed his temples with his fingers, and said to himself, in any case, the year that decides our fate still showed up at our door, leaving us only a few months left. Li Yu slammed Long Chuan's desk, and said in a deep voice, let's go find Talon together. Don't let the information about Operation Divine Sword leak out, not even to Han and the others. There's still some time, we have to look closely to see to what extent can Han perform his Wolf Fang tactic. If he can really perfect tactic Wolf Fang, then we will go and get rid of those damned raiders. We will let that bastard Sally Empire see, although Earth is small, but no one here's a coward. Chapter 53. Old Mo's visit. You are listening at novelfull.audio. A few days have arriving at Nazca base, Han's daily routine was completely restored. Training every day, practicing Wolf-Fang tactic with the group, asking pathless questions non-stop, and aside from those, Han would also study the pharmacological book that Night Walker gave him. Han originally thought pharmacology would be a particularly boring skill to learn, but when he really started studying he discovered that being a pharmacist was actually quite fun too. The most important science behind pharmacology is alchemy. For example, the expensive Shirakawa smoke orange can accelerate cell metabolism, and if you can't afford it then you can also use the extraction of yellow land roll, West vanilla, and hualien to get the same effect. All in all, the era of interstellar pharmacology was a field concerning very complex harmonic technology. Starting with the purification process, to drug interactions, drug formulation time, temperature, and even adding bacteria into the medicine sometimes too, in order to enlarge pharmacological effects. Han felt that pharmacology was like a microscopic world, full of mysterious changes, and the real masters were the existences that have mastered the art of changing the potency of pharmaceutical products. Of course, Han's learning of pharmacology was just for fun, he didn't not spend a lot of time on it. His primary mission right now was still training himself, improving his level, and also helping everyone master the Wolf-Fang tactic. After a few days of time, Han received an email from Old Mo on the Dark Net saying that he had currently reached the outer solar system, carrying equipment sets for a battalion of million units, some basic herbs and experiment tools that Night Walker wanted to give him, as well as Han's own equipment set. Han got very excited and got the license to enter Earth's airspace from Long Chuan for Old Mo, and hurried to fly to the Sahara Desert to see Old Mo. It was still that old tattered industry ship, it appeared at the horizon and landed at the boundless desert. As a businessman that did illegal trades on the Dark Net, Old Mo has always been cautious when making contact with outsiders. So Han had to meet him alone, and the combat Falcon fighter hit far away after dropping Han off. In addition, Han also told Long Chuan to not attempt to communicate with this ship, because the cautious Old Mo didn't want to even leave behind any communication record. After all, the Dark Net was a shady place hidden from the light, most of the businessmen there are as cautious as Old Mo. He was willing to personally deliver the goods to Earth, which was already showing a great amount of trust in Han. The door opened, Old Mo and a few robots walked out. He was not wearing protective clothing so his real face showed, and Han thought he resembled a pangolin, eyes were very small, wearing wind sunglasses, and his body was covered in blue scales. Old Mo. Han waved and shouted. Old Mo looked at the burning sun in the sky, and sincerely said, "Such a beautiful place and no one's living here. You people on Earth are really wasting precious resources." Han smiled and looked around at the sand hills, "What good place. It's just a desert and you can't even find a drop of water. We people on Earth don't like living in deserts, we prefer living by the sea or the plain." Old Mo shook his head, sighed and said, "Before landing, I carefully looked at Earth. A planet as beautiful as Earth is really rare in Milky Way, no wonder a lot of empires want to colonize you guys. Even I want to spend my old days here." Han didn't say anything, anyone living on Earth knew very clearly the Empire isn't really desperate about Earth because of how beautiful it is, but rather because of the priceless Class B extinction domain here. "Did you bring all the stuff?" Han asked. Old Mo gestured. Those hard-working robots opened the ship's back door and carried down a few alloy cargo containers, and Old Mo took off the blue spatial ring on his finger and handed it to Han. "Do not worry, I've fully cleansed my ship, now my Vulture, TL. Name of ship, doesn't have any radiation, it's very safe. Look, the stuffs inside the ring are your personal belongings, and these are the goods you bought for Earth." Old Mo led Han and opened each container to check. "Oh right, this box is also your stuff. Night Walker had me give you some raw materials and a set of equipment to make medicines. Also, this box contains your own medicine, like nuclear energy pills and stuff. Also, Pathless told me to give you this, a versatile training suit. He said, your current training method isn't convenient when you are doing long-distance traveling, so he gave me this to give it to you. With this suit, you can train anytime and anywhere. Old Mo opened one of the boxes, and explained how to use it. Han looked curiously at the equipment for drug formulation. It seemed quite advanced and Han didn't recognize most of them. Then Han picked up the training suit Pathless gave. It was a very heavy suit with complex circuitry installed and it carried an alloy backpack-looking thing. The instruction says that the suit can adjust the temperature, gravity, and even imitate the pain you receive from getting attacked. Han was so glad. This odd man Pathless origin, he always scolded him like no tomorrow, but secretly he's been really good to him. This versatile training suit is probably worth a lot of money. With it, Han can travel to distant destinations without having to carry around that huge pool of water, and also have something with so many functions. Lastly, Han opened the Sky Spatial Ring. These alternate dimension storages were really convenient. Anyone wearing it can activate it, and all it needed was some source energy poured into the ring. The powerful soft metallic combat suit Black Kylan, the sharp silver moon crescent, white bone dagger, cash, they were all in there. Old Mo said, I've sold that power crystal for you for 12 million GC, already transferred it into your account. Han chuckled, thank you thank you. To express my appreciation, I prepared some food and drinks. It's getting dark soon, leave after eating dinner. Old Mo thought for a moment, decided to stay behind and try the delicious Earth cuisine that Han was talking about. So, Han took out the already prepared military folding table, propped it up, and from the backup he pulled out 12 heat-insulated lunch boxes, a bottle of Maotai. He used the portable pot and heated up the food. Han sat down on the floor with Old Mo and had a simple yet pleasant dinner. Chinese cuisine enjoyed great fame through ages, and all the dishes bought by Han were classics. Braised lion head, TL. Just big meatball, not actual lion head, boiled shrimp, spicy chicken, Beijing sauced ground beef, boiled fish and others, and the main course is of course Han's favorite, meat in bum. Due to Old Mo's perennial life in the wilderness, of course he never had the time to enjoy such delicious meal. He took a big spoon and praised the gods literally after every bite. In the Kuei culture, everything is a gift from God. Everyone from the Kuei race is very pious. Han had 2 glasses of drink, sat and watched Old Mo eating everything. The delicious cuisine and beautiful sight of Earth significantly improved Old Mo's impression of Earth. Halfway through the meal, he put away the leftovers into a fridge carefully and said that he will save it for later to slowly enjoy it when he craves for more. It seems no matter what culture or race, the love for delicious food is the same, and the delicious Chinese cuisine easily conquered Old Mo's appetite. Other than loving meat in bum and hot chocolate, Han feel okay with most other cuisines. In comparison, he likes Old Mo's robots more. During this visit, Old Mo's number of robots increased a bit to 20-something, and he said it was from repairing during the voyage when he had nothing else to do. Seeing how interested Han was about robots, Old Mo patiently explained to him, from the history of robots all the way to all the different types robots today, how the internal structure, and whatever he knows. Unfortunately, Han is still a novice, and he could only understand a little bit about the robot technology left behind by the prehistoric civilization. Needless to say, robots could improve work efficiency, and the key was how loyal and obedient they were. When Old Mo was eating with Han, they just blankly stood there and they came to clean up after Old Mo and Han were done. They just do whatever they are told to do. Old Mo sighed, Earth got delicious cuisine and a good environment, but unfortunately, it's still time for me to go. Old Mo said, and he's already sounding nostalgic. Han laughed and said, if you like then just stay. With your knowledge in robotics, you can easily become the federal chief mechanic, and by then, you will have great food made for you every day and also be able to live wherever you want, and isn't that better than going to distant battlefields and live every day under fear? Han was very sincere, although Earth is short on money, but it's more desperate for talents. If old Mo can fix such complex robots, then obviously he's a very skilled mechanic. Old Mo said in a deep voice, I wanted to, but unfortunately I'm not at the age of retirement yet. When I was young I wished, if I'm going to be a Skinner, then I will be the best one out there, and I won't stop until I can retrieve a set of godly equipment from the battlefield. This time, I'm going somewhere really good. Although it's a lot riskier, but it's very possible for me to accomplish that goal of mine. Then let's make a pact, if I succeed this time, then I will come to Earth to find you for sure. By then, you just have to get me a small house here and I will be satisfied. No problem. I got you. Han smiled and asked, you mentioned Ares.class equipment earlier, what's that? Chapter 54. War approaching. You are listening at novelfull.audio. You mentioned Ares.class equipment earlier, what's that? Han asked in curiosity. Old Mo said, you probably know, in Milky Way, any espers at 6. Star level are called quasi.god of war, also known as quasi.warlord. When they get to 7. Star, then they became the real god of war or warlord, and those called Ares.class equipment are equipment used by those warlords. Due to the fact that 7. Star espers will have at least over 10 million units of power source index, even the powerful tritanium in the hands can be easily broken like plastic. So, the warlords all use special equipment and they are all unique models. Ever since I was young, I loved playing with machinery and metal. Now that I have robots, if I can collect one set of Ares.class equipment, then my life can be considered not lived in vain. Han slightly nodded. 7. Star espers were obviously powerful existences and they were basically legends in the Milky Way. Want to collect a used set of Ares.class equipment from those warlords? Old Mo's ambition was really not small. Slightly smiling, Han said to Mo, anyways, I wish you to be successful, and then come early to Earth to spend your pension plan here. Old Mo laughed. He let his robot find a thick notebook and handed it to Han, saying, accepting your hospitality, I don't really have anything to give you in return. I might as well give you the notebook that holds all my research on robots in the past few years. These are all my years of research experience, so you can't even buy it with money. Of course, you have to be careful because robotics is illegal after all, be care that people might send you to jail after knowing about it. Han waved the notebook, thank you then. Such a precious gift, I will take good care of it for sure. Schwa, the old industrial ship, took off and left Earth in a sketchy and shaky manner. Han watched old Mo leave and had some strong feelings. He was a little envious of old Mo's lifestyle, leading a group of loyal robots, digging around ancient battlefields and being able to see different landscapes every day. Someday, I want to become a galactic adventurer. Han thought in silence. Everyone needed a dream, but Han's only goal right now was to make it to the Galactic Meet's main competition and avoid having his home become the colony of another empire. Otherwise, if Han comes back from an adventure in Milky Way and oh shit, his home is gone, that would be a really sad thing. With the communicator, Han called the long-waiting transport troops on the periphery, and they took all the equipment back to the Nazca base to distribute it to the troops. Despite being second-hand goods from the Dark Net, all the soldiers were very happy. After all, they now finally have their own equipment. With the perennial lack of funding, espers on Earth are actually very easy to satisfy. The routine life continued, training, studying, practicing tactics, and 1.5 months passed in the blink of an eye. During that time, the problem with galactic pirates and raiders became even more severe. Due to the powerful Atlantic cruiser that was guarding Earth, the galactic raiders did not dare to openly loot, but instead, they always rushed to a small city to grab whatever valuables they could before fleeing. Han and the soldiers in the First Legion were very angry, but they couldn't do anything. The raiders steal quickly and left quickly as well, making it very tough to prepare for these raids. Within just 1.5 months, Earth was actually attacked more than 100 times, averaging to about 3 times a day. On the worst day, 9 attacks were recorded in one day, which really brought panic to Earth. Now people didn't even dare to live in small cities with insufficient defense, desperately swarming into big cities with better defense, causing all major cities to be overcrowded. On the streets, more and more homeless people appeared, and they are all lacking food and clothing. Han knew, the raiders and pirates are that rampant because Thornbird's achievement was spread. One raiding group, looting the same planet multiple times and almost blew up Earth's C.class extinction domain. After hearing it, other raiders and pirates naturally perceived Earth as a good bullying target, and they all began to target Earth. Good people get bullied, obedient horses get ridden, the galactic meet haven't even started, and Earth's situation is already worsening. Like usual, Han conducted several pharmacological tests and headed towards the training center, where there were a series of pools of cold water constructed specifically for Han. Before even entering the door, Han already saw the depressed Qingzhong. My mom just called me, the city that my second aunt lived in were attacked by a group of galactic pirates, my second uncle was hit by a stray bullet and had to get his leg amputated. He's going to live the rest of his life in a wheelchair. And my 2 little cousins, just 8 or 9 years old little girls, they were so scared that their face turned blue, aside from crying, they couldn't even speak a whole sentence. My mom asked me, "Aren't you a soldier? Where were you when your second aunt's house was attacked? Why weren't you on the battlefield?" I didn't even know how to King answer. I'm so pissed. What the K is Long Chuan doing? Why didn't he dispatch us to defend Earth? Why form First Legion if all we do is training and more training? If we can't even protect the city our family lives in, then what the K are we training for? Han, you tell me, don't you agree with me? Qingzhong was very loud and the whole training center heard it. The Nbebe with 2 beautiful thin legs also pinched his waist and said, "Qingzhong's right, last month my dad went on a business trip to a small town and that city also got attacked. He almost didn't make it home. Now I told my dad to quit his job since my government bonus is good enough to feed my family, I'm never putting my family under risk again." The impatient Parker cried, 1.5 months and there are 139 attacks. Did the pirates really think of Earth as a soft punching bag? Han, let's go together and protest against Long Chuan. What are we still training for? It's more urgent to assign everyone to defense to prevent more attacks. Since the last time Han stomped the group of 4 stars led by Xian Beige, he naturally became the leader of the group. Plus, they have all been practicing the Wolf Fong tactic and it was led by Han, so everyone formed the habit of discussing things with Han first. The recent series of attacks on Earth angered everyone. Han lowered his forehead, came to the glass window and looked out at the open, and he said in a deep voice, "Look. Look at what? It's just snowing. I've seen it multiple times back at home." Nicholas from Siberia said in a careless tone. Han shook his head, he pointed and whispered, "Look, First Legion's practicing in the snow again, and Long Chuan is personally leading the team. These large-scale trainings went from once every 3 days to now daily. And each soldier are training with a full set of equipment on, all commanders were present at the training, even Chief Talon of United Government flies to Nazca base every few days. Do you guys not feel that tense atmosphere of an approaching war?" After listening to Han, everyone was shocked. Qingzhong scratched his big head and said, "Speaking about that, I have a friend that manages logistics on Atlantic Cruiser, he's currently super busy loading large number of supplies and he didn't even have time to answer my phone." Xian Beige stroked his chin and said, "That also reminds me, my cousin's on the maintenance team on Atlantic Cruiser, and they are all busy doing first class maintenance for the cruiser, all the equipment including the toilets were completely checked. Maybe it's really like what you said, we are not making any moves because we are preparing for something big." Han slightly nodded and said, "We will wait and see. When I was doing experiments I occasionally observe what's happening outside. From what I saw, the atmosphere in the base is getting more and more intense. Long Chuan's office light hasn't been off for a long time, every day he was in the office working until dawn. If I were Long Chuan, I won't assign the soldiers of the Legion to small cities for defense. Earth has 150 million people, tens of thousands of small cities, what's the use of scattering our small legion? There's a good old saying, deal with thieves you deal with their chief. If we want those space pirates and raiders to never dare setting a foot on Earth, then we have to fight a war that can prove that Earth's not a soft punching bag. We must let them know the price they pay for harassing Earth. Is that true? Great, we have all been waiting for this day, Han. When do you think this battle is going to be? Who's our target? The crowd surrounded Han and they all asked. Han thought about it and said, it should be within the next 2 days. After all, the training frequency of the First Legion has brought the soldiers close to their limit. Right now, we will just patiently wait and not cause any trouble. Got it. Xian Beige nodded heavily, and he strode toward the training center. Where you going? Aren't we going for bubble tea? And Bebe yelled at Xian Beige. Not going, you go yourself. Xian Beige got into the training room, and there came immediately sounds of weapons slicing through air. Looks like Xian Beige is taking the initiative to increase his training load. Han looked out the window in silence. The snow is coming down heavier, the whole world outside is covered in white. First Legion's high-intensity training is still going, the soldier's figure gradually turned into a bunch of black specks in the distance. Chapter 55. Tragedy at Sydney. You are listening at novelfull.audio. 2 more days passed by. Han soaked himself in the cold water with a temperature unimaginable by ordinary people. Now, Han is able to withstand water as cold as 0.110 degrees Celsius, and train within it for 3 hours without getting harmed. At the end of training, Han climbed out of the ultra-cold pool, white steam pouring off of his crimson-red skin. Gabon Han swallowed a nuclear energy pill, which was an illegal drug that was used to temporarily increase source energy. It could stimulate the 0-degree brain region to produce and release source energy in large scale. Every year, millions of soldiers died or became paralyzed due to taking nuclear energy pills, so it had long been recognized as the most dangerous forbidden drug by the Milky Way Alliance. But, Han had the very unique toxin-resistant body, so now he could not only take nuclear energy pills on a daily basis, but he would take it once before and once after training. If normal soldiers were like Han and ate these pills like candy, it was probably enough to kill them more than 100 times. Large amounts of source energy started to surge into Han's body, clearing out his fatigue and filling his body with energy. After going through as much as 3 hours and 40 minutes of extreme training, Han still felt like he had the energy to fight a few rounds with anyone. This was the power that only belonged to Han. He practiced like crazy, studied like crazy, and consumed drugs that no one else dared to use like crazy, so his level was increasing like a rocket. There was a mirror inside the training room. Han faced the mirror and put on his jacket. Very distinct muscles were bulging on his body. If someone were to go up and feel Han's biceps, they would notice that Han's muscles were way too special and felt as tough as steel, completely unlike the type of muscles that humans were supposed to have. That was a side effect of undergoing long-term extreme training. Aside from drastically leveling up, Han had also become as tough as a robot. He once practiced with the highest level Esper on the team that wasn't him, Xian Beige. Xian Beige was a 4-star intermediate Esper, who was recognized as a proud genius that was hard to spot in millions. He was an existence with a power source index close to 50,000. It was just a melee fight without using power, but it was already way too difficult for the Xian Beige with nearly 10 times as much power source index units to end the fight with a draw against Han. Han's muscles were too solid, it was like wearing a full set of armor, giving him a high tolerance for melee attacks, and Xian Beige could barely hurt him. On the other hand, whenever Han landed a punch on Xian Beige, it was usually painful enough to make him scream. In conclusion, under the mentorship of that odd fellow Pathless Origin, Han grew at an unprecedented speed, radiating the aura of a monster and becoming less and less like a normal human. The equipment at the training facility were very advanced. Inside the room there was a high-configuration computer with a large screen. Han took off his necklace, took out the Dark Net login program inside the USB and habitually found Pathless Origin. As Han got more familiar with Pathless, they started to use video chat. Now, Pathless wasn't as cold as before, but he became even stricter with Han. Even if there was a tiny mistake during training, Pathless would criticize Han like there was no tomorrow. Han saw that strict old face of Pathless, smiled lightly and said, "Teacher, I finished your mission. I think I can go to 120 degrees Celsius water to train." Pathless slightly nodded, and started to carefully review Han's training record today. The portable physiological assessing machine Han carried will send his daily training records to Pathless, and the records included heartbeat, blood pressure, source energy consumption, and a lot more. Han slowly realized, Pathless wasn't just give Han training advices casually, there seemed to be some sort of science behind it, like when to lower temperature, when to increase intensity. Pathless decided these things all based on the recorded data. Pathless slightly nodded, "All right, power source index at 4,257 units, according to Milky Way's current level standard, you are now an intermediate 3-star Esper, and all indicators are excellent. Tomorrow you will enter the 120 degrees Celsius pool, and your training goal is still to practice the 46 ensemble." Han scratched his head and said, "Teacher, why still 46 ensemble? Now I'm like the odd one in my battalion. I'm already at the level of intermediate 3 stars and I still only know the 46 ensemble, I didn't even study any other martial arts." Pathless glared at Han, "So? You are not satisfied?" Han hastily shook his head and said, "Nope, I'm fine with that, I always trust teacher's arrangement." Then, Han said, "Recently, Earth's situation is worsening. Yesterday, Earth was attacked 13 times and that's the worst so far. There was even a raiding group that attempted to attack a large-scale city on Earth and caused heavy casualties. But our First Legion have been training like crazy these days to prepare for war. The troops would practice from morning all the way to night. The chief of our legion visits us daily to see how the practice of Wolf Fong is going. Teacher, if I guess correctly, just in the next 2 days, we are probably going to war." Pathless slightly raised his eyelids, then nodded and said, "I'm aware of your situation, you feel like if you can learn a bit of martial arts then you can perform better on the battlefield, right? That's my intention." Han didn't try to hide it. Pathless sighed, "To be honest, you are indeed at the stage to learn martial arts, but not mentioning this battle, 2 months later when you are doing your last test for the pressure exam, you will need martial arts more at that time, but you must know, you are a bit different from others. Other people learning martial arts might be a good thing, but for you, it's a disadvantage in most cases. After all, your power and combat features are too different. Picking a style of martial arts, you must be careful and more careful. As to the war you are going to be fighting, don't worry. Your body now is tougher than anyone's, your toxin resistance is stronger than anyone's, and your power is also unique. These 3 are your foundation. If you can exert the true battle spirit on top of that foundation, and be able to freely bring into play the features of 46 ensemble, then you are already an excellent fighter." Han thought a bit, nodded and said, "I got it. Being desperate for speed might actually slow me down. Rather than cramming it all at once, I'm better off just focusing on how to fully utilize what I already know." After training, Han still needed to take the comrades at the Talent Battalion to practice the Wolf Fong tactic together. Han saw that it was almost time, he said goodbye to Pathless, left his personal training room and went to the lobby. Han saw that everyone was already there, surrounded by the big screen and watching intently, while Nbebe was nervously dialing her phone on the side. "Let's go, we are starting." Han waved his arm and said. Strangely, no one responded, these people were all very energetic about training before. Qing Zhong turned around, said in a deep quiet voice, "Let's wait a bit, Sydney was attacked. Han was seriously shocked. He hastily came to the screen and saw that it was broadcasting the famous Sydney Opera House. That once symbolic landmark was now engulfed in flames, and that shell-shaped structure completely collapsed. The camera slowly panned out. The whole city was in a mess with countless spots of flame dotting the entire city, and the sounds of sirens and commotion in the distance. At the side of a shattered street, there was a broken street light pole pressing down on a mother, who had curled up to protect her little son. That little boy was crying loudly, but no matter how hard he cried, his mother still didn't wake up. A skyscraper collapsed, and under the ruins a thin arm broke the surface. Obviously, this arm belongs to a young woman. She pointed her finger at the sky, and her voice crying for help began to faint. Under the rubble, it's still unknown how many lives were buried. Maybe they lost their consciousness before even getting a chance to shout for help. The camera on the helicopter constantly switched scenes, broadcasting the tragedy that took place in the Sydney city. The live TV broadcast was in awkward silence. Perhaps even the broadcaster didn't know what to say at a time like this. And Bebe still kept on calling, but the phone was always playing the busy tone. Xin Beige let out a quiet sigh, and said to Han in a low voice, "Her family is in Sydney." Han didn't say anything, and everyone was quiet. BDNV suddenly, the always cheerful and Bebe finally broke out of silence, smashing her phone against the wall into pieces, and finally punching the alloy wall, punch after punch. Ah! It's hard to imagine that the sound coming out of the throat of such a beautiful girl was not the painful cry of a beast. And Bebe rushed out of the lobby into the yard, facing the starry sky. She finally cried. The cry was that painful and hopeless. "I will go see her, you guys keep on training." Xin Beige stood up and said. "At this point, who even has the thought to train?" Ching Zhong patted his head with his big hand and said with red eyes. Xin Beige's figure finally stopped. He didn't look back but said, "Originally, I shouldn't say this. But my cousin that's working on the Atlantic cruiser told me, they were ordered that at the latest tonight, the ship must finish its first-class maintenance." Han, I think you guessed it. Tonight might be the last joint training we have before leaving, so it's very important. Chapter 56. Gathering. You are listening at novelfull.audio. After hearing about the confirmation of finally going to war, everyone participated in the last joint training with great enthusiasm. In the training camp, the majority of the espers were young people, so past training sessions were always full of laughter. But now, everyone was silent, and they were trying their best to suppress their rage. The news media continued to criticize the First Legion for not defending Earth. For the past few weeks, Earth was constantly under attack, and that has already worn down the citizens mentally. The Sydney event became the fuse that detonated all the pressure that the citizens were under. People began to question, when Earth was getting attacked again and again and again, where was that First Legion that the United Government of Earth invested so heavily in? Why didn't they stand up and protect Earth? With the Thornbirds gang as the lead, all the active pirate groups near Earth had gathered together and attacked this major city that was located in Australia. Since Sydney was located in Oceania, which was far away from the mainland and didn't have immediate access to large-scale reinforcement, the pirates and raiders were able to act brazenly. Worse, after several big pirate groups swept clean Sydney, the pirates actually started firing at the city using the cannons on their battleships, razing this beautiful coastal city to the ground as well as causing heavy casualties. Undoubtedly, the pirates and raiders were full of contempt for Earth, completely ignoring Earth's government and army. Although many espers were in the army, the few espers left still living in the town still stood up bravely against the intruders, and actively cooperated with the police to resist the invasion. Of course, many of them were never leaving the battlefield ever again. Unfortunately, the raging citizens couldn't see that, and the media directed all the hostility towards the Esper administration. There were even voices of doubt among the United Government's House of Commons. After a full 4 hours of joint training, Han ordered dismissal, but the majority of them didn't leave the training base and continued to strengthen themselves in other subjects. Han knew, all his comrades felt helpless. It was not that they didn't want to protect the civilians, but they were restricted to the barracks. And Bebe had stopped crying and locked herself away in the training. Han let out a small sigh and walked out of the training center. He came to the yard. The snow had stopped, but the air was still unusually cold. The weather this year here was quite unusual, and no one knows why. Han saw a slim dark shadow in the dark. It was Long Chuan, and he was coughing violently in the dark. Han slightly frowned and walked over to him. Long Chuan saw Han and offered him a cigarette. Han shook his head and refused. All the members of the genius camp probably hates me now, right? Long Chuan smiled bitterly and said. Han replied, not really hate, at most they just feel depressed. Long Chuan said bitterly, you are very honest, it doesn't matter. Hate or not hate, I don't care. Sometimes, in order to achieve a strategic goal, it's necessary to make sacrifices. Han nodded, so we are really going to war. Long Chuan didn't deny it. He looked down at the time and said in a deep voice, there are still 3 hours. You still have some time to sleep. Han shook his head, I can't sleep, so I will go back and pack up. Okay. Long Chuan said emotionlessly. Han laid on his bed, stared out the window into the night. Long Chuan said that we are leaving after 3 hours, and that was at 3 o'clock in the morning. Han already packed the things he needed to bring in his blue spatial ring. Although the room inside the ring wasn't too big, only 1 meter cubed of space, but it was still enough to hold weapons, his combat suit and many medicinal drugs. At 2:15, the base suddenly lit up, all the spotlights were instantly turned on and followed by a hard military siren. Han sat up from his bed, took his backpack and went straight out of the room. All the members of the training camp all lived on the same floor. Han just stepped out of the door and he saw Qingzhong, Xian Beige, Nicholas, and the others. Everyone's heart seems to share the same beat, they all packed up long ago and were ready to roll. Qingzhong carried a giant 300-liter travel bag, and Han knew that it was full of high-calorie foods, the essential source of Qingzhong's battle strength. And Bebe also came out. She had changed into her battle suit, showing the curves of her body, but her eyes were still red and she didn't look too well rested. Everyone went out in silence, and followed the main troop to board the long-waiting Atlantic cruiser. From the sound of siren to everyone boarding the cruiser, it only took 35 minutes. Although it was recently formed, but everyone in the First Legion seemed to be already very well trained. After all, these were the elites chosen from the 150,000 espers, so the First Legion's combat power was definitely the highest in the entire army of Earth. Han laid beside the porthole looking down. He saw the 3 giants of Esper administration saying farewell to each other, Liu, Talon, and Long Chuan. Of the 3, only Long Chuan will command the First Legion into battle, and the other 2 will stay behind to defend Earth. In the current organization of Earth's army, aside from the First Legion of over 10,000 members, there were only several special tactics teams from headquarters and other branches. On the Atlantic cruiser, Han saw Chu Li and his 4 special tactics teams from the Shanghai division, which meant that the whole region of Shanghai was currently only being defended by 1 team, and that was a total of only 11 espers. Clearly, the operation was out in full strength, putting all their cards on the line. Long Chuan is probably under a lot of pressure. Han laid in front of the windows and thought silently. I'm leaving all the resources of the administration in your hands, so for this war, make Earth proud. You are only allowed to win. Talon said in a deep voice in Long Chuan. Long Chuan slightly nodded, smiled and said, leave it to me. According to our intelligence, the Thornbird raiding group is already gathering. Without the cooperation of such a large group, Earth will face less pressure. But you guys still have to be on guard. After all, I'm taking all soldiers with me, and our home is just an empty shell for now. Liu pointed at himself and Talon, look at us, do we f asterisk 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 ing look dead to you? Just take care of your team, and leave everything at home to us too. Don't worry about anything. Understood, bye. Pa Long Chuan stood at attention, and paid a very standard salute to Li Yu and Talon. Li Yu and Talon solemnly saluted back. Turning around, Long Chuan lightly coughed twice, and started walking forward in big steps. The north wind blew, Long Chuan's slim yet tall and straight figure soon disappeared in the wind. Li Yu gritted his teeth and his eyes turned red. With a suppressed voice he said, Long Chuan's illness is getting worse. This time he's putting everything on the line, he's probably didn't think about coming back alive. Talon nodded slightly, and said in a very deep voice, I know. Before passing away, he wants to do something for the planet he loves so much. As friend, the only thing we can do is to not stop him. Long Chuan is a true warrior, he has his own pride and glory. Shua loaded with the one and only Esper Legion, the Atlantic carrier ejected intense blue flames out of its engines, ascended into the sky, and then disappeared into the starry night sky in the blink of an eye. Chapter 57. Set sail. You are listening at novelfull.audio. The Atlantic cruiser wasn't a troop transport ship, but 12,000 soldiers were crammed in with an additional 8,000 crew members that were already on board, so it was very crowded. Rooms had not been assigned, so everyone was stationed in the hallway with their luggage and equipment. Most people here were leaving Earth for the first time, so everyone was curious to take a look from the port window and see their home planet getting smaller and smaller, eventually becoming a humble black speck in space. Only by being in space could humans feel their insignificance. The deep sky outside was seemingly endless, so vast and extensive, and triggering mixed feelings for the warriors visiting space for the first time. To have a home in such a desolate vast universe, it was not an easy thing but could still be counted as a blessing for the humans on Earth. If one day Earth gets colonized by another empire, then I'm afraid that most of the people here today would become homeless, wandering endlessly in the Milky Way. The beautiful and fertile Earth was the shared home for all of mankind on the planet. Unfortunately, there weren't a lot of civilians on Earth that had any combat strength, leaving the burden and tremendous pressure of protecting their homeland to the small group of espers. Shua the Atlantic opened up a transition channel and a bright circle appeared, lighting up the dark sky like a holy aura. The Atlantic cruiser went into the transition channel, and as the channel shuts, the cruiser began to move across the space. Its surroundings are no longer starry sky but only colorful streams of light passing by at the speed of light. The scene was extremely dream-like. Cough cough. Suddenly, the all-channel broadcasted on the Atlantic. The soldiers had the iconic cough of the 5-star Esper Admiral Long Chuan. He cleared his throat, and said in a deep voice, Atlantic, this is your captain and commander for this operation, Long Chuan. Here's our tactical layout. Qing Zhong was suddenly shocked, and he nudged Han to listen carefully to the announcement. The Atlantic suddenly became unusually quiet. Long Chuan paused and then said, as we all know, recently Earth was under constant attack from pirates and raiders. After the enemies took turns to attack, there were a large number of civilian casualties which placed the rest of citizens in panic. According to our intelligence, we know that these attacks were in fact caused by someone who hired the Thornbirds gang to lead organized crime groups in the hopes of creating chaos. Their goal was likely to cause the civilians to lose hope in Earth's united government and military. That way, on the Milky Way meeting, the enemy can use the government on Earth cannot maintain normal order on their own grounds as a reason to take control of Earth. Ultimately, they wish to colonize Earth, and then raid Earth's resources and population. As a soldier of the United Government, as the strongest Esper Legion in the United Government Army, we cannot allow that to happen. So the United Government authorized me to gather the United Government's Air Force, the Atlantic Fleet, the Esper Administration's 1st Legion and the Special Forces to advance into the lair of the Thorn Bird Gang and to launch the final attack. This operation's code name is Divine Sword. There's only one goal, and that is the total elimination of all existing Thorn Bird raiders and criminal groups threatening Earth. While they are all gathered on one planet to hold a joint assembly, we will seize this opportunity to annihilate them all, fully eradicating the enemy's threat to Earth. Since we chose to fight, then we must eliminate the enemies. Cripple them. Stomp them until they no longer dare to even come close to Earth. From now on, the Atlantic cruiser will enter radio silence during the voyage, with an estimated time of 24 hours before entering the battlefield. May God be with you. Over. After Long Chuan's speech ended, everyone finally realized how crazy of a battle this is. Directly finding the enemy's gathering spot, and then fight head-on against the raiders. The advantage of this is obvious: if successful, then we will eliminate all these nasty raiders and pirates in one fell swoop, fully eradicating their threat to Earth. If that fails, Earth will lose most of their elite troops and never be able to recover. From Long Chuan to normal soldiers, everyone was feeling tremendous pressure. After all, this was the first large-scale war after the establishment of the United Government, and also the first war outside of Earth, so everyone was very nervous. The head of the Thorn Bird gang, Lucas, was recently described to be having his best luck. He got an important order from the Sally Empire to cooperate with the nearby notorious criminal organizations to harass Earth, with everything being funded by the Empire. The Sally Empire was located in Centaurus, which was only a few hours of flight beside the solar system where Earth resided. They had long desired Earth's environment and its untapped B.class domain, and they were not stopping until they got what they want. The only problem is, above the Empire, there was still the Milky Way Alliance. Depriving Earth of its sovereignty and colonizing it was not a tough task for those empires in the Milky Way, as long as they can prove that Earth was too weak to sustain normal operations and couldn't guarantee the safety of civilians. But how could they prove that the federal government couldn't protect themselves nor their citizens? It was simple: just hire criminals to attack. Then, the evidence of Earth being too weak to defend and retaliate against these attacks will be added to the public documentation at the meeting of the Milky Way Alliance in 2 months. If this was to happen, then it would make the Sally Empire's proposition to colonize Earth a lot easier to pass. Now, the Thorn Birds gang was regarded as the Sally Empire's imperial agents to gather everyone. The Thorn Birds had 5,000 fighters, placing them as one of the largest among all the nearby criminal groups. Chief Lucas was also an intermediate 5-star soldier with a level approaching quasi-warlord. He had the strongest fighting strength among all the nearby criminals. Although the plan of having multiple pirate and raider groups attack Earth seemed to be a good plan, it still had its problems. Since outlaws didn't have rules, many problems would arise. Who contributed more but were not rewarded any money, as well as those who hid and didn't participate but were paid anyways. After nearly 2 months of experimental attacks, Lucas also discovered the problem: the existing scale of attacks was not enough to completely embarrass Earth and bring it to its knees. What the Sally Empire wanted was 24-hours harassment, and it was best to completely cripple Earth. As to how many people died on Earth, it was not their concern at all. After all, the Sally Empire just wanted the territories and extinction domains but not the civilians on Earth. The Empire already have enough civilians to care about. Since the contractor demanded a higher requirement, Lucas and his Thornbird raiding group needed to find a way to get it done. The counselor D. Fu came up with an idea. Instead of assigning groups to individual missions, it was better to just unite all the pirate and raider groups into one, and have Lucas command them all. After the contractors satisfied, then all groups will be dismissed, and those groups will all be paid based on the percentage contribution in terms of battleships and soldiers. This idea is obviously wise, because during and after the war, the Thornbirds could also eliminate a few of those smaller and weaker groups along the way, and take over their people and ships for themselves. The greedy Lucas felt that D. Fu's idea was very good, so they held the Alliance meeting on Planet No. N65871 to discuss the team-up plan and implementation of strategies in more detail. The other pirate and raider groups all agreed because of the money. After all, the Sally Empire was very generous. Shwa battleships of various sizes arrived one after another to this dirt-yellow barren planet. The outlaws started setting up tents in the desert, and then went on to eating and drinking while discussing matters of how to attack Earth together. But, they could never have dreamed, a heavy battlecruiser carrying the elite espers of Earth was also heading this way. Chapter 58. Close the doors, let the dogs out. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 58. Close the doors, let the dogs out. When the outlaws gathered together, three things definitely wouldn't be missing: alcohol, women, and gambling. Looking around, with the desert as the center, the scene was full of sights like drunk men doing adult things to women, and people swearing and gambling everywhere. In a white tent, the head of the Thornbird Raiders, Lucas, with two women in his arms, was sitting together with the chiefs of other outlaw groups. In comparison to their men that were fooling around outside, they were behaving in a civilized manner. Come on, let's finish this cup. From today, we make money together and spend it together. Lucas raised his full glass of ale and proposed a toast. The head of the Gerbil pirate group, Donald, rubbed his mouth, and said cautiously, I don't have anything against the money offer, the golden contractor behind this is generous enough. But we still have to be careful, after all Earth is still a country, their Esper population exceeds ours and they also have a heavy battlecruiser. The Mad Cloud Raiders chief, Amir, disagreed, what kind of shit country is Earth? It just joined the Milky Way Alliance a few years ago, and they got nothing other than that Kalake and the Air Fortress-class cruiser, there's nothing to worry about. We will just follow Lucas's plan, take turns to execute that 24-hour battle every day until Earth is on its knees. Oh, by the way, Lucas, the golden contractor really did say, if he successfully takes ownership of Earth he will let us go berserk and kill on Earth for 3 days and 3 nights. Lucas nodded, of course, our boss only wants Earth and he obviously don't want the burden that comes with Earth. The more people we kill and abducted, the more hassle we save for our boss, so of course they are happy with it. Amir laughed out loud, nice. I love working for this type of boss. I heard that the quality of chicks on Earth is pretty good. After we are done I'm going to grab a few ships of them. All the chiefs started laughing. The Sally Empire agreed that once it colonized Earth after the Milky Way gathering, TL. Previously known as Galactic Meat, they will allow the pirates and raiders to do whatever they want on Earth for 3 days, and that was something the outlaws were very willing to do. However, the always cautious Donald said again, Chief Lucas, our intelligence reported that Earth's heavy cruiser disappeared. Now that our alliance is settled, why not let us go back so that our base isn't vulnerable with most of our troops here? Lucas sneered, and threw his glass at the table, Chief Donald, you've been just a pussy since the beginning, is it that you don't want to make money together with us? If so, then leave and I won't stop you. He pointed to the sky and continued in a deep voice, you take a look yourself, we have a fleet size of more than 30 warships, just the ones in the air on watch is already more than a dozen, rotating on 6-hour shifts. Earth in total has 1 cruiser, so it's even better if it comes. After destroying Earth's only battleship, then it would be even easier to take down Earth. Well said. They won't dare to come even if we give them 100 guys. Donald, man, you think too much. All the other chiefs didn't worry too much. Seeing everyone being so dismissive about his words, Donald chugged down a glass of alcohol and displayed a downhearted mood. Starships relied on transition channels for mobility. If Earth's Atlantic cruiser wanted to attack the outlaws, they first had to create an artificial wormhole, and then let the starship through the wormhole to arrive in the combat zone. The key stage was here. The outlaws had air defense, so the moment the transition channel opened up, before the Atlantic cruiser even entered the territory, the defending battleships would already begin its ferocious attacks on the Atlantic. Most likely, the Atlantic would explode before it even leaves the transition channel. These outlaw chiefs were not worried at all because they really didn't believe that Earth will send their only battleship to die. Come on, cheers. Lucas was right in the middle of having fun, and he gave another toast. Boom. His voice just faded, and in the desert not too far away, a sudden burst of wind started blowing. The dust covered the sky, the ground started shaking violently, all the food and drink on the tables scattered over the ground, and all the outlaws that were having fun all stood up and looked towards that direction. Lucas slightly frowned. Could it be a sandstorm? Although the planet N65871 had an atmosphere as well as oxygen that was essential for the survival of humans, but it already went through desertification. There was severe weather, lack of water, and frequent earthquakes and sandworms. This planet was uninhabitable by galactic standards, and that was why the outlaws could easily occupy and hide on it. But before the gathering, Lucas already ordered someone to predict the weather, and there shouldn't be any large-scale sandstorms appearing. Could there be an error in their calculation? After a few seconds, the earth began trembling even harder and the outlaws began to panic and start to slowly retreat. Rumble! There came an extremely loud noise powerful to almost shatter eardrum. It was very similar to the sound of high-speed rotations of a battleship engine when the space transition ends. It's a transition channel. Oh shit. Someone's driving their ship straight into the desert. Run. Hurry and retreat. Call air support. Call air support. In the sky, a huge black shadow appeared. It was the Atlantic. Earth's only heavy battle cruiser. Air defense. Under the command of Long Chuan, the Atlantic cruiser skipped right past the air defense. He didn't establish Atlantic's endpoint of the transition channel in space but directly in front the outlaw's face. No sane captain would do something like this, because opening up the channel directly near the planet's surface was way too risky. If there was any error and the channel opened up not at the surface of the planet but beneath the surface, then the spaceship would immediately become an excavator and get buried alive. In addition, when the transition channel opens up, if it inhales too much sand and rocks, then the channel become unstable, which also leads to a horrible result. In the instruction manual of starships, it stated clearly that the transitional channel needed to be established away from any physical object, and Long Chuan completely ignored it because he knew very well if he used conventional tactics, then there was no way he could eliminate this group of outlaws. If Earth wanted to win in adversity, then they should be the greatest risk. Kacha! Before Atlantic came to a full stop, two huge noises sounded at the same time. One was the sound of the detonation of a super interceptor bomb, and the other noise was the sound of Atlantic's landing door opening up. Boom! With the detonation of the interceptor bomb, a cloud of bright light quickly surrounded the entire barren planet. Interceptor bombs could release strong interference waves for 30 minutes, capable of stopping engines from starting and depriving all battleships of their mobility. It was a tactical weapon that sacrificed 800 to destroy 1,000. The moment it was activated, the battleships of both the ally and foe were all staying. No one could even think about leaving. The 12 battleships on watch in space couldn't move at all because of the interference from the bomb, being unable to provide any support to their allies on the ground. The same situation went for the ships parked on the ground. Under the orders of the godly commander Long Chuan, the Atlantic was like a sharp knife that went straight into the hinterland of the enemy. At the expense of their own mobility, the Atlantic immobilized all 30 or so battleships on the raiders' and pirates' side. Success. Long Chuan's insane divine sword operation really succeeded. The United Government of Earth with only one battleship, really forced the outlaws with over 30 ships into a dead corner. The protector of Earth Lake was no longer here. That was really unfortunate. But Earth still had its godly commander of the generation, Long Chuan. His stratagem, courage, and plotting were all unparalleled in the world. Now, the door is closed. The next step is, release the dogs. The landing door of Atlantic completely opened, and more than 12,000 of Earth's finest espers all rushed out. They have been suppressed for way too long. And they rushed out like a tsunami of mad dogs. Earth vs. Outlaw Alliance, the war broke out immediately. Chapter 59. All on the line. You are listening at novelfull.audio. The war had broken out in the desert. More than 12,000 Esper's soldiers rushed out of the Atlantic. They had been suppressing their rage for a long time, and now they all ran out like a group of mad dogs towards those raiders that were in the middle of having fun. In the past few months, Earth was under constant attack from these outlaws and suffered great casualties. Now, the only way out was laid in front of the soldiers from Earth. If they wanted to prevent these tragedies from happening again, they have to eliminate all these enemies in front of them right now. Stomp them until they no longer dared to set foot on Earth. Rumble. Just as the soldiers flooded towards the enemies, the Atlantic also began its violent battle with the pirate battleships. Although the interception bomb could paralyze the engine, it couldn't interfere with the energy and weapon systems, so the battleships could still fire their cannons. The Atlantic opened up its 4 missile launchers and fired towards the sky, bombarding those battleships that were stuck. It also started firing its heavy cannon into the sky, even though, at the same time, the Atlantic was also under heavy fire from enemy ground fire. As Earth's only battleship, it had no choice but to rely on its energy shield and thick metal armor to defend against the enemy attacks. The battle situation was very tricky. Atlantic chose to not target ground units and focused all their effort on bringing down the 4 destroyers and 8 frigates in the air. This was a strange tactic, because the raiders had more battleships parked on the ground. There were at least 6 destroyers and 19 frigates. The Atlantic's firepower strength was undoubtedly powerful. Its primary cannons could one-shot an enemy frigate, and its heavy cannons only needed 7-8 shots to sink an enemy frigate. Although the enemy's destroyers had very tough defenses, against the cruiser-class warship's heavy firepower, they could hardly last more than 30 seconds under the Atlantic's full onslaught. However, even if the Atlantic could completely shoot down all the enemy battleships in space, what about the other 25 parked on the ground? Now their cannons were all locked onto the Atlantic. Under the siege of so many enemy ships, the Atlantic's energy defense system started quickly depleting. Could Long Chuan be planning on giving up Earth's only battleship? On the ground battle, the one leading the charge was the United Government's 1st Legion, personally led by Long Chuan. Han and his Wolf Fang squad was placed behind the 1st Legion, and behind them were the special tactics squads from different major branches of the Esper administration. This was also an arrangement that Han couldn't get his head around. Placing the crucial squad that could both attack and defend in the rear, Han could still understand. Long Chuan didn't want to lose the young talents that were Earth's hope of competing in the Milky Way gathering, so he wanted them to execute coordination and support missions. But what about the Special Tactics Squad? Different from the 1st Legion, Special Tactics troops were the senior troops on Earth, and they have been cooperating with each other for years. Other than the fact that they were smaller with only 2,000 members, their fighting strength was ahead of the 1st Legion for sure. However, Long Chuan placed such a strong army in the very rear rather than having them lead the charge. It didn't meet the conventional tactical arrangements. Rumble, kill them. Suddenly, the 1st Legion that was leading the charge had collided with the enemy. Large-scale battles among Espers were very cruel. Both sides had powers, fireballs, ice arrows, tornadoes, all kinds of superpowers appeared, and the chaos and anxiety of this battle was far from being comparable to conventional wars. According to Long Chuan's arrangement, the 2 wings of Earth Federation Army consisted of Espers that specialized in long-range attacks, and the center assault troop primarily consisted of strength descent Espers. The monk that was good friends with Han was placed in the central assault team. This arrangement was conducive to strengthening fire coverage, as it was also the typical blitzkrieg tactic. Bang as the leader of the Wolf Fang squad, Han was not only responsible for assault, but he also needed to constantly observe their surroundings and maintain a clear head. Just when he turned around to see how the special tactic troops were doing, he was suddenly shot in the chest. The bullet hit his black Kylan suit and Han felt a burning pain. The outlaws began to use firearms to prevent the 1st Legion from advancing. In modern warfare, the role of firearms had been extensively weakened. The modern firearms now generally use shell-less kinetic energy ammunition, where the warheads and propulsion mechanism were directly connected as one piece, eliminating the need to dispose shells when firing, and greatly increasing shooting speed and firepower. Not only were the small to medium-sized firearms using shell-less kinetic energy ammunition, even the Atlantic cruiser's 600 heavy-caliber cannon also used this type of ammunition. Overall, heavy artillery still posed a deadly threat to espers, but the firearms generally wouldn't be able to penetrate the combat suits that espers wore. In addition, all espers had a layer of source energy protection, so unless a heavy firearm of over 37 caliber was used, the bullets wouldn't even be able to penetrate source energy protective layer, not to mention being able to kill espers. The real significant threats to esper soldiers were laser weapons. However, these weapons used a lot of energy, nor were there handheld models. Most of them existed in the form of guns armed on ships, and the smallest laser weapon in the Milky Way still needed a strength descent esper to be able to carry it. It was very costly and heavy, so it's not suitable for large-scale investment. Brothers, let's charge. Han did not care that he was hit by a bullet, but what he was surprised to find was that all of the special tactic troops started sprinting. They received clear instructions and quickly passed through the Wolf Fong squad that was originally in front of them. They split up into smaller units and started rushing towards those parked enemy ships in the rear of the battlefield. Suddenly, Han finally understood Long Chuan's intention. The special tactic troops were at the very rear because they were given a very difficult mission, and that was to take advantage of the chaos of war to seize those enemy battleships on the ground. After all, on this battlefield, the outlaws had up to 37 small and big battleships, positioning them in absolute dominance in terms of firepower. Although the Atlantic had heavy armor and firepower, but it still could not resist the continuous bombing from the enemy ships. Hence the plan was to capture the enemy ships, seize them and then turn their fire around at the enemies. They don't even need to seize all to be successful. As long as part of the special task force successfully controlled some enemy ships, the situation on the battlefield will be completely reversed. Let's go too. Let's go, even the special tactics team is ahead of us now. What are we waiting for? We are the Wolf Fong squad, why are we hiding behind our main force? Ching Zhong and the impatient Parker were all shouting at Han. Everyone was young and hot-blooded. Seeing the front was already in the heat of battle and the special tactic forces behind them went all out too, then the Wolf Fong squad was really left behind everyone else, and became the safest troop in this battle. Safe. This was war. The war with blood running and people dying every minute. Saying a troop was safe was almost the same as insulting them. Wolf Fong's brothers all became blood-boiled and anxious. All of you shut up. Be quiet. Han turned around and shouted, we are on a mission. Don't you guys get it? Up until now, Long Chuan's tactics were very successful. The special tactic squads began quickly seizing control of enemy battleships, which really gave the unsuspecting raiders a surprise. But not only did the pressure he was feeling not decrease by a single bit, it got even heavier. It was because he knew very well, the strongest special tactical troops were now dispatched to execute the plan of seizing enemy ships, and that meant the crucial and difficult mission of annihilating as many as 15,000 raiders and pirates had totally fallen on the First Legion. Without the support of the special tactical squads, the First Legion was now definitely at a huge disadvantage of fighting against the enemy's strongest ground troops at a numbers disadvantage of approximately 2 to 3. Dovco. Chapter 60. Four-Eyed Celestial Dragon. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Han finally understood Long Chuan's strategy, and he also realized the risk associated with this tactic. With the Atlantic cruiser facing the enemies in the sky while the special tactic teams seizing control of enemy battleships on the ground, there were no problems with these two moves and they could even be called a plan written by God, easily qualified to be included in textbooks. But, there was a huge problem in this battle plan, and that was the First Legion plus Wolf Fong squad in total having only about 10,000 Esper soldiers. Was it really enough to annihilate the enemy's 15,000 merciless galactic raiders? If the First Legion cannot win this fight, then the tactics, no matter how brilliant they were, would be overshadowed. In this war, the ground battle was the key that decided everything. If the raiders won, then they will immediately provide reinforcements for their own fleet and attack the Atlantic, resulting in all of the previous tactics and achievements becoming completely overturned. So, the First Legion must achieve complete victory. There was no other way. As Han envisioned, the First Legion took advantage of the enemy's panic phase and achieved good results. Long Chuan led the vanguard and pushing forward non-stop, slaying countless raiders on the way. But soon, the raiders got a firmer footing. Under the pressure of a few powerful leaders' strong pressure, any deserter would be beheaded, leaving no choice for all the pirates and raiders but to strike back at Earth's army. I will kill whoever that dares to take a step back. Lucas raised his arms and released 2 lightning bolts, instantly turning 2 retreating men into burned black carbon. The chief of Thornbird Raiders was not only an intermediate 5-star Esper, but also an extremely powerful Thunder Descent Esper. And Thunder Descent had an S rank among all superpowers, equipped with high speed and powerful damage. All other groups' chief also followed Lucas, and for those outlaws that had always been ruthless, they killed a crowd of raiders that were thinking of leaving without any hesitation. Fight or retreat, either way is death. Brothers, let's give it our all. Kill those damn monkeys from Earth. Kill them, and then we can go grab women on Earth. The pirates and raiders all rallied together out loud and began to strike back. These people are all brutal murderers that could kill people without blinking. They had lived their lives licking blood off of their weapons, so they were extremely vicious when it comes to battling to the death. Suddenly, the situation started to progress towards the unfavorable direction for the First Legion. After all, the First Legion was just recently established. In terms of battle experience, they were not the outlaws' opponents, so when these raiders started to strike back desperately, the First Legion actually couldn't make any further advances, and the vanguard troops were stuck in a close combat situation. At this moment, Long Chuan was at the center of the regiment leading the main attack, and he knew very well, in addition to tactics, what was also extremely important in war was momentum and morale. There was a good old saying, do it in one breath, or then you will tire and finally you will be exhausted. If they can't take care of all the enemies at once, then with the First Legion's fewer numbers and without the reinforcement of special tactical troops, the situation will only get worse. So far, the special tactical troops had successfully completed their mission and seized at least 4 enemy battleships, quickly turning their cannons around and started firing back at the raiders together with the Atlantic. But, the special tactical troops and the Atlantic were already barely dealing with a large number of enemy battleships, so it was impossible for them to provide any reinforcements to the ground troops anytime soon. The efficacy of interceptor bombs still had 27 more minutes before ending, so even if the special tactical troops and Atlantic could establish superiority in aerial warfare, they still wouldn't be able to fly around the battleground to provide reinforcements. Now, the First Legion could only rely on themselves and its 49-men Wolf Fong squad. If not dealt with quickly, the enemies will only gain more advantages. Long Chuan finally decided. He raised his arm and delivered a hint, it's the signal for everyone to take drugs. Kaka, seeing the signal, all soldiers quickly took out the long-prepared nuclear energy pills, and then swallowed it whole. These were illegal drugs are from the Galactic Dark Net. One single pill could increase their source energy index by 50%. That is, for a soldier that originally had 1000 units of power source index, after taking the nuclear energy pill, it will increase to 1500 units, substantially increasing the combat power. Illegal drugs, they have become a characteristic of the Earth Army. Drugs like nuclear energy pill were only sold on the dark net, and its usual buyers were criminals or killers. Who can expect the official army of a country to take illegal drugs together? But in order to win, Long Chuan couldn't consider too much anymore, the stakes placed on this war was too much, almost dispatching all the elite forces on Earth and putting the fate of the entire planet of Earth on the line. The First Legion espers that were just feeling exhausted took the drug, and they immediately felt their body bursting with energy. Even their eyeballs turned red. And Long Chuan, he threw a handful of drugs into his mouth when no one was looking. No one knew what types nor how many types of forbidden drugs he took, but in fact, Long Chuan was already giving this battle his all. Ever since the beginning, he didn't intend to go back to Earth alive. The serious illness did not leave too much time for Long Chuan. For now, he was the strongest Esper soldier on Earth. He felt that it was his duty to fulfill the obligations of a soldier during the last stage of his life, and that was to lead the United Government's troops and secure a historical iconic victory. So, that was why Long Chuan would be this crazy this time, completely disregarding everything else. Long Chuan let out a tremendous roar, raising his hands high above his head with white light gathering between his palms. Suddenly, a stream of light rose out and coiled into a giant dragon. Look! It's Long Chuan's four-eyed celestial dragon. So powerful. Wasn't there a rumor saying that Long Chuan was seriously ill and no longer has the energy to summon his celestial dragon anymore? Looks like we really underestimated him. All the soldiers of the Wolf Fang squad saw the giant dragon that suddenly appeared in the sky and admired. Not only did Long Chuan have the highest level, without the appearance of Han's void end, Long Chuan's also the possessor of the strongest power on Earth. The rare source energy fantasy descent. Espers that possessed this type of power could summon a Eudemon through the release and materialization of their source energy. The shape of the Eudemon differed based on the ability type. According to standards in the Milky Way, the Eudemon that Long Chuan summoned should be called Mad Python, but since Long Chuan's name had a dragon in it, TL. Long means dragon in Chinese, people were more willing to call this snake a celestial dragon. Due to the overdose of nuclear energy pills, the dragon that Long Chuan summoned was a lot bigger and even more shocking than any he summoned before. The dragon had 4 eyes because Long Chuan's level was at the pinnacle of 4 stars. Although he was born with excellent talent, he could never make the final step to 5 stars, otherwise this dragon would be 5-eyed and also substantially more powerful. Woo the 4-eyed celestial dragon out. Both the heaven and earth were in shock. Under the control of Long Chuan, this dragon started to rip through the enemy formations, tearing through any life it saw. Because it was made of source energy, the celestial dragon wasn't afraid of any attacks and it was completely fearless. It drove the pirates and raiders right into disarray. F***K. They actually have a source energy fantasy descent. Such a powerful snake. We can't hold it anymore. We must retreat. The raiders and pirates were all crying. Just when they finally established a firm foothold, they were forced to retreat. The situation was reversed again. The First Legion's powerful offense was like the tidal wave, giving the enemy so much pressure that they couldn't even breathe. Long Chuan looked up proudly, watching the retreating enemies. He decided to inject a cardiac stimulant to this war. Let the Wolf Fang group go to right wing. We must remain resolved and win this war. Long Chuan said to his deputy Go Su in a hoarse voice and bloody red eyes.